We're fortunate enough to have Bloggers Blurb here at the Kimberley Civic Center on this Tuesday evening. Josh Lockhart, our Kimberley Dynamiter blogger. And first of all, your thoughts on for tonight's game?
It has been all Fernie.
It has been indeed.
In the radio, Coach Stewart mentioned that he's hoping the team would be more comfortable playing at home after the 2 rough road games and very unfamiliar arenas. It almost looks like Fernie's more comfortable in this barn than Kimberley right now.
Well, they certainly have a half a step on the Dynamiters for the most part, and the Dynamiters making defensive mistakes, trying to pinch into the blue line, giving multiple 2-on-1s or what word am I looking for? Odd man rushes against the Dynamiters. I thought Adam Anderson has been outstanding.
He's been left to hang several times, like the amount of breakaways. I
would say there's been 5 at least odd man rushes, 2-on-1s, and like you say, a couple of breakaways, and he's made outstanding saves.
Yeah.
The first 2 goals that Dynamiters got were as a result of penalties.
Yeah.
The first one just after the penalty expired, the second one during the power play for the Riders. And like you say, they want this game more than the Dynamiters apparently tonight.
They do, and the other piece, this is very similar to the game that they played in Nelson, where it was penalties that cost the Dynamiters the game. And so far, that has been the case. Those 2 early penalties and then 2 goals, it's been all Fernie since then.
And the Dynamiters 1 for 2 on their power play opportunities, and you don't want to take penalties against the Fernie Ghostriders. Tonight, they're showing they have a pretty good power play.
Yeah, despite their short line with 14 skaters, at least that's what I counted, they've got a lot of energy out there.
So the question is, can they maintain that for 60 minutes? They've played hard for 40 minutes, and I noticed that Mitch Titus has been out there a lot.
Yes.
And his line. So I think he's being double shifted with 14 players, but he's the kind of a player that perhaps doesn't use up a lot of energy. He's quick, and he knows when to carry the puck and when to let others take over. So
he's got a big heart.
And a huge heart. And like you say, the whole Fernie club has played an outstanding road game.
Yeah.
And taking advantage of the Dynamiter mistakes, boom, it's 3-1.
And the Dynamiters, I'd hate to say it, might have thought this could have been point night after the Ghostriders. They're on a 6-game losing streak right now, and they lost to the Golden Rockets. That was their first regulation win of the season, and then they were shut out 5-0 by the Crescent Valley Thundercats. So you got to wonder for a team that had a 9-game win streak going, that if they thought tonight might have been easy pickings.
When you hear that the other team is going to be shorthanded and with APs playing, yeah, you would have to think that subconsciously, I know that to a man they're going to say, no, we don't take these guys lightly.
Right.
But subconsciously, I think you're right, is that we don't have to work quite as hard.
Yeah.
And again, all subconscious, because I know the Dynamiter coaching staff is right now is chiding his players about taking advantage of the offensive zone, get some good forecheck. The last minute or so of that second period, the Dynamiters hem the Riders in. And for the first 5 or 6 minutes of that period, I thought the Dynamiters kind of took control. But then the Riders kind of took over for 14 minutes, and the Dynamiters had control in the last minute.
Yeah.
And the second period is not the Dynamiters' best period during the season anyway.
At all.
and they were outscored 1-0 in that period. So the Dynamiters, generally speaking, have a good third period. So it's whether or not they can put that together and keep the pressure on the Riders. Brock Merkel playing an outstanding game as well, again.
Yes, and he tends to get better as the game goes along as well, as we've seen the past couple games that he's played here.
I think he just enjoys playing against the Dynamiters.
I think so.
I know his goals against average is 4.35. I think his goals against, now depending on, I don't know on that 9-4 game whether or not Merkel was in goal for that game in Sparwood a couple weeks ago, but his goals against the Dynamiters is probably under 3.
If not lower sometimes, right? Yeah.
All right. So anything else from the blogger's point of view?
From the blogger's point of view is the showcase, not All-Star game, showcase coming up this weekend. And
we got Risdon and Russell, I think, going.
Not Russell, Palmer.
Risdon and Palmer going for the Dynamiters?
Yeah. And Coach Stewart was understandably upset. He was thrilled when, at the AGM for the KIJHL this past summer, they decided to add 18-year-old players instead of just showcasing the 16, 17-year-olds.
Right.
Because some 18-year-olds, for example, like Brock Palmer,
Right.
have come to our league to stand out and then hopefully get back to junior A. So he was hoping more than 5 18-year-olds would be allowed on the team, and only 5 were allowed. So players like Russell that you mentioned, and also Chase Gedney, had a good chance, but Brock Palmer has had an outstanding season, so he got the nod as one of the 18-year-olds.
And the showcase being in Kelowna is a good place for that, because it's a nice central location. Yep. Scouts from the different teams, both WHL and BCJ, easy traveling to Kelowna with the airport right there. So it's a good place to have the showcase to show off some of the talent in the KIJHL.
We have an airport here.
We do, but you have to say that.
Right, it's a little bit more of a central location or destination than Kimberley and Cranbrook, yes.
And at some point, we probably will have a showcase here in Kimberley, because I know the Dynamiters did try to get it here, and they will do it again. And at some point, we have one of the better rinks in the Kootenay Conference as far as the facilities are concerned. So I'm sure that the showcase will be here at some point.
Yes. So what I did, though, was I crunched some numbers from last year.
Okay.
Because the idea of the showcase is that we're showcasing the young talent and that they'll then move on.
Yep.
And I'm still on the fence whether or not this is a good number. So out of the 48 players that were picked to go, something only like 40 did play in the game, not all 48. And only 16 players moved on to the WHL or Junior A. So that's 1/3 of the players.
Right.
Which, that's a good chunk.
Yep.
But I think there's this part of me that was like, if it's a showcase, you would think half would go on, right?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why some players might not want to go on. Now, there's people playing for like a player that played in the Alberta Junior A Hockey League, Cooper Page, has come back to the Dynamiters.
Totally. Yep.
So it might be that some players that could move on, but chose to stay at the Junior B level for a number of reasons.
Totally, and a great example, 3 of those players from the showcase no longer play hockey. So
right.
There is that component to it as well, right? We're talking about 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old teenagers that are looking at going to college, graduating high school, whatever the life pursuits might be. Hockey may not be on their radar anymore. So it was one of those things that I guess I just was like, I'm not sure if this is something to brag about or not, that only 1/3 moved on.
Well, the thing that I would say is, like, you take your 16 and maybe the 17-year-olds where they've been scouted by Junior A and they're on the radar. So as they mature in the KIJHL, they might get that call a little bit later and move on maybe next year or the following year to as 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds.
This year might be interesting, as we will have 10 18-year-olds participate in the showcase to see, do they move on, or is it more the 16, 17-year-olds that move on? So I'll be paying attention to that. And then this is, again, where I struggle, where is it, 58? Nope, sorry. It was 58% of the Kootenay Conference, and then 45% of the Okanagan Conference stayed in the WHL, stayed in the KIJHL, which I think was just over half, right, of the players that were showcased are still playing in the league. So again, some of them just want to stay here, and I believe in that logic of play in a league where you can dominate, so then you'll be seen. Is that why they're staying? Well,
let's take a case of one of the Dynamiters that were in the showcase last year, Harrison Risden.
Totally. Yep.
As a 16-year-old, as a defenseman, is he ready for that Junior A jump? Or after he plays this year as a 17-year-old, will he then be able to make that jump because he got a little more strength, a little more seasoning in the KIJHL? Because as a 16-year-old in the BCJ or Alberta Junior Hockey League, you're probably going to be the 7th or 8th defenseman. 6th or 7th, so you're not going to get the ice time and not being able to develop. So I can see a lot of that happening. Is that a BCJ team might say, okay, this is a guy we want to look at to see if he develops, and if he develops, then we'll invite him to camp maybe next year or something along those lines. So that's what I see.
And we had Cage Sturzer, who from last year from the Dynamiters,
Yep.
and is playing it in the Junior A in the BCHL. So, yeah, I think numbers don't tell the whole story. There's definitely a lot more to it. And one of the things when I mentioned that 3 players don't play hockey this year, someone from Kelowna mentioned to me that one of the players, or was it Kelowna or Summerlin? It was one of those guys, I can't remember.
Someplace in the Okanagan.
Yeah, someplace over there. Said one of the players that is no longer playing, it's due to injury, right? So sometimes there's those factors that don't, that needed a little asterisk beside it instead of just they're not playing. It's not by choice that they're not playing.
So let's talk about the standings here in the KIJHL. The Dynamiters going into tonight's hockey game, number 1 across the league.
Yep.
Coming out of tonight's game, maybe number 2.
All depends on how Castlegar or Nelson do, yeah.
And again, Castlegar and Nelson, a heated rivalry just like the Dynamiters and the Fernie Ghostriders. That'll be a tough game for both of those two teams. Yep. But having said that, it's going to be a dogfight for the rest of the season. And again, I think Creston and Kimberley duking it out for first.
Yep.
I don't think that there's enough time for the Fernie Ghostriders to catch the Columbia Valley Rockies for that 3rd spot. So I think, depending on who wins the Eddie Mount division, Fernie will be playing the 1st place team, and Columbia Valley will be playing the 2nd place team. Because either one of those teams, I don't think that's enough time to move up
to catch the other. Yep, I would agree. But the thing I'd be worried about is, unfortunately, the Ghostriders had to restart their season.
Yes.
Due to the tragedy. So you got to wonder if they're starting to peak now, and then you'd hate to play them in the first round of the playoffs.
Hard to be peaking when you got 8 players out of the lineup.
Yes, that's true.
I think they're playing on guts and heart right now. Yeah. That's whether or not they can keep it up for the last 20 minutes. I guarantee you the Dynamiter coaching staff is touting the fact that we have a good 3rd period. Keep them hemmed in their own zone. Get them tired out. Yep. Pot a couple of goals. Yep. If only 2, get it into overtime, and then see what happens in overtime.
Right.
Merkel hasn't let in a lot of goals against the Dynamiters, so 2 goals is a pretty high bar for the Dynamiters to get.
It sure is.
And yet keeping the Ghostriders off the score sheet in the 3rd period. I mean, that's pretty much their game plan. Get 1 in the first 10 minutes, get 1 in the second 10 minutes, and then see what happens.
Yeah, that's all they can do.
Well, I know you had to leave early, so unless there's something else,
school night, so my son wants to get to bed. So,
any final thoughts before you head out?
Final thought. I just wanted to mention one other thing about the standings is in the Neil Murdoch division. It's going to be very interesting. The battle for 4th place. The Spokane Braves are catching up to the Grand Forks Border Bruins. So that will be nothing against the Border Bruins, but I would rather see Spokane get in there. They're due 4-1.
Okay, and there's a reason for that.
The reason for that is because I went to Gonzaga University. so that's the reason.
So you're kind of all right. Get out.
That's it. I will leave then. Time for bed.
All right. Thanks, Josh Lockhart, the Dynamiters blogger. Once again, Kimberley's blogger's blurb.
Well, thank you.
Thanks very much. Stay tuned for more exciting KIJHL hockey action featuring the Kimberley Dynamiters.